こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材はリーズユナイテッドの田中碧に関する動画です。以前にも何度か紹介しましたが、ワンリーズファンチャンネルから、今回は前節の試合のマッチリアクション動画を紹介します。イングランドチャンピオンシップ第13節で、リーズユナイテッドはプリマスと対戦し、3対0の圧勝でした。相手チームのシュートを0本に抑えるなど、結果だけでなく内容でも圧倒した試合では、ゲームをコントロールし、スムーズに問題を起こさないようにすることが主な役割だったのかもしれませんが、試合の内容にはあまり触れられず。田中碧とロスウェルのボランチのペアについて、今後グルエブとアンパドゥが戻ってきた時に、誰を出すべきか、という議論がされています。田中碧の序列が最も高いであろうということと、ロスウェルも田中と同じくらい称賛されるべきだというチャンネル主のコーナーの意見と、視聴者からのコメントにも反応をしていく場面を切り取っています。田中碧が評価されているのがわかる動画でもありますので、お楽しみください。それではチェックしてみましょ
う。Tanaka was just ticking over Tanaka ticking over, you know, a little bit of alliteration there, but that's exactly what he is. Ticks the ball over. Played a lovely switch ball over the head of the left back at one point, of which Byram didn't read. But aside from that, it seemed like Rothwell was the one getting hold of the ball today and trying to drive Leeds forward. Tanaka just probably doing a bit of your Graves today. And we can't make like real definitive differences between those two, Gruev and Tanaka, in a game like today. And I'm only mentioning Gruev because he was on LUTV, but Gruev and Tanaka were very similar in the play today. Tanaka wasn't doing anything, you know, crazy. He wasn't doing anything too sort of pressing in the forward positions. He was just keeping the ball ticking over. That's exactly what Gruev does. So, you know, that is where Gruev's very good, at keeping the ball ticking over, getting the ball, moving it, getting the ball, trying to create space in that middle part of the pitch. But I think we've got to get more in there, you know, in terms of what this side is capable of. Connor, how does Ampadu and Gruev get back into this team? Excellent point. I think I've always said this, like with Ampadu, I've questioned the fact that with Rothwell and Tanaka now there seems to be a balance. We've played the better teams, we've played the worst teams in this division, and there's no problem with those two. They're not struggling. There's no defensive issues. There's not being defensive liabilities in that midfield whatsoever. You can coax yourself into believing that there has been, and football is subjective, but the stats won't tell you that either. And Ampadu and Gruev would have faced maybe the same defensive frailties as that midfield has had. So then, for me, you've got to look at football and ability. I don't think ability-wise, as a footballer, as a technical footballer, Ampadu's above Rothwell. I don't think that. That will be unpopular because Rothwell's a lone player, and I sort of say what I think. I don't care. But he's not. He's just not. And if Rothwell was a Leeds player, I think people would maybe have a different mindset. He's just not a better footballer than Joe Rothwell. And you've seen that today and amongst the games where Rothwell's been head and shoulders with Tanaka above other midfields in this division, the so-called best midfields in this division. So that's the biggest test they've had, and they've come through it perfectly. So for me, I will put the absolute yardstick down that Gruev should not be getting in this league. Gruev is fourth choice defensive midfielder right now, or fourth choice pivot player. And if you disagree with that, fine, but tell me why. What does Gruev offer, without just coming on and saying you're negative, you're pessimistic, blah blah blah, and not actually having an intelligent conversation about it? Let me know exactly why you'd put Gruev over Rothwell and over Tanaka right now. You just wouldn't. You can't. There's nothing in his game which elevates him above those two for me. And those two have now shown that they've got the defensive sides of the game as well, just in different ways. Ampadu's the big conversation. Ampadu's the big conversation. I think Ethan Ampadu's my favourite player. I love Ethan Ampadu. He's the captain of the football club. I love the fact that he was shit at Sheffield United and he's been so good with us. I'll never be able to get that game against Chelsea out of my head where he was up against a fully fledged top midfield and him and Archie Gray ran the game. So for me, if we're being honest, Ethan probably comes back in the side for Rothwell. But I don't understand why the fan base don't give Rothwell more flowers. I don't get it. And I think it's because he's not our player. Tanaka's our player. So that's the difference. But Rothwell and Tanaka are closer than you think. They're a lot closer than you think. And for people who say there's a massive difference between them both, or like Tanaka easily gets in an Ampadu, why? What has Rothwell shown? Because from a defensive perspective, yeah, Ampadu's probably your more defensive midfielder, maybe, but the balance is perfect with Rothwell and Tanaka, and they've proven it against sort of every type of team in this division. They've faced every type now. And I'm not saying they've faced every team, but they've faced every sort of type of team. The best teams, the low block teams, maybe the mid block teams. Why does Ampadu get right back in? Why, when they've been so dominant? Because I think they have in every game. I think they've been the dominant midfield pairing. I think the only bloody nose they got was probably Watford, where Watford came into the game in the second half a little bit. And I thought pack the midfield with Cambly, Chad Vizate, and Sissoko. So they had three in the midfield. And I thought that confuses a little bit, but you can bring Brendan Aronson into the conversation there of why didn't he just sort of like drop back into that midfield three and make it more of a three instead of a two against a three. So for me, yeah, there's a big conversation there to be had. Who would I pick? Gun to my head. I don't know. And I'm the only one saying this, by the way. I'm on a hill by myself. I'm not being influenced by everybody else. You know, we know like there's content creators of people on Twitter who will just say what everybody else says. But there is a proper conversation here why Rothwell wouldn't start. So it's an interesting one, mate. Leeds United community says, Tanaka versus Rothwell offers more going forward in tight spaces. Don't give the ball away. Rothwell has to play. Ampadu, Greve, and Tanaka all play the same position. Brendan, I think you bang on, mate. I think you bang on. You bang on. And listen, I'll read out every single comment, and even if you disagree with me, Rothwell does offer something different. You are bang on. I said that on a stream before in terms of like Tanaka, the ticker over Tanaka. That's what he is. Greve is a ticker over, but he's limited, really limited in his football play. Here's one for you. So do you remember when we get like in the first games of the season, Greve's going forward more, right? And people were saying, yeah, but do you remember those couple of times where he'd play the ball over the top or he'd switch it, then he stopped for some reason? Rothwell does that twice in about 10 minutes. And people are glazing Greve for doing it over like the first 6 games a couple of times. Because literally heat maps and everything will tell you he didn't do that consistently. He didn't. You'd watch the game and he doesn't do it. So it's all about control and keeping the ball within a 5 to 7 yard radius and keep it ticking over. Yeah. And you are right. I think Tanaka's a little bit more of an advanced 6. We've been molding into that 8. But Tanaka's closer to Rothwell than Ampadu and Greve. But I'm just so thankful that Daniel Farquhar has been forced to show these two together. I'm so happy about that. But yeah. Farquhar has been looking at Greve, got injured in my opinion. Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I agree with you there. DF didn't play Rothwell or Tanaka till forced to do so by injuries. Now he's in the same to Schmidt. We just better buy Rothwell already. Brendan said, I love Rothwell's energy. Love how he drives with the ball. Greve don't get the bench. I'm not putting Ampadu ahead of these guys. Michael says, for me, Connor, it's Ampadu and Rothwell. My reason is that I think it would be the best balance, and that's not a knock on Ow. That's so interesting, Michael. I'd not thought about that because it's like, it feels like Tanaka's just like almost first name on the team sheet right now with Pask. But, mate, you look at today's game, right? And I get that there's I've got to be consistent here. There's variation between them two. Like one has to drop, one has to go. I get that. But they're just kind of like, I always said this with them, they've got like an invisible rope between them where like they just know where one's going. But yeah, I just think Rothwell's variation is just great. Really, really good.
次は解説です。コーナーの英語は強い癖もなく、非常に聞き取りやすいと思いますが、いかがでしょうか。難しい表現も今回もあまり使っていませんし、以前に解説したものも結構ありましたので重複しているものもありますが、面白い表現もありますので、楽しみながら学びましょう。それでは解説です。
Tanaka ticking over.
ティックオーバーはもともとエンジンのアイドリングするという意味ですが、スポーツや日常会話などで淡々と進める、スムーズに進行するという意味で使われます。サッカーの文脈では、プレーや試合の流れを大きく変えずに、リズムよくボールを回したり、安定したペースでプレーすることを指します。
Tanaka ticking over. Tanaka ticking over. You know, a little bit of alliteration.
アリタレーションは頭韻という意味ですが、詩や文章で使われる習字技法の一つで、隣り合う単語の頭文字や音が繰り返されることでリズムや印象を強める方法です。日本語では、頭韻法や頭韻とも呼ばれます。
You know, a little bit of alliteration. You know, a little bit of alliteration would have faced maybe the same defensive frailties that.
フレイルティは、脆さや弱さ、脆弱さを意味します。具体的には、身体的精神的性格的な弱点や欠点または壊れやすさや耐久性の低さなどを指す場合に使われます。
would have faced maybe the same defensive frailties that would have faced maybe the same defensive frailties that Rothwell's been head and shoulders with Tanaka.
ヘッド&ショルダーズは何かや誰かが他の者や人よりも頭一つ抜けている。はるかに優れているという意味で、周囲よりも頭と肩が一つ分高く出ている状態から他の人々よりも視覚的に目立っている様子を表し、他と比較して一段と目立つ。頭一つ抜けているというイメージから来ています。
Rothwell's been head and shoulders with Tanaka. Rothwell's been head and shoulders with Tanaka, and they've come through it perfectly. And they've come through it perfectly. And they've come through it perfectly. So for me, I will put the absolute yardstick down. So for me, I will put the absolute yardstick down. So for me, I will put the absolute yardstick down, where he was up against a fully fledged top midfield.
フレッジーは羽毛が生え揃う。飛べるようになるという意味の英単語で、特に若鳥が成長して羽が生え揃い、飛べるようになることを指します。巣立ちや自立とも関連して比喩的にも使われ、フリフレッジドで完全に成熟した。本格的なという意味で使われます。
Where he was up against a fully fledged top midfield, where he was up against a fully fledged top midfield, and I think the only bloody nose they got was probably Watford.
ブラッディノーズは文字通りには鼻血ですが、比喩的に使われる場合は挫折、一時的な敗北、屈辱的な経験を意味します。軽いダメージや一時的な挫折、屈辱的な体験を表すため、日常会話やスポーツ、ビジネスの場面などで頻繁に使われる表現です。
I think the only bloody nose they got was probably Watford. I think the only bloody nose they got was probably Watford. And I'm the only one saying this, by the way. I'm on a hill by myself.
女ヒルクは文字通り丘の上に、山頂にという意味でも使われますが、比喩的な意味で使われる場合は孤立している。他の人と意見が合わず、一人で立ち向かっているという意味で使われ、状況が不利でも自分の立場を守り続ける姿勢を強調し、ポジティブな自己主張や逆境に対する決意のニュアンスを含んでいます。
And I'm the only one saying this, by the way. I'm on a hill by myself. And I'm the only one saying this, by the way. I'm on a hill by myself. I think you bang on, mate.
バングオンは内容や判断がぴったり、ドンピシャであることを示し、相手の発言に強い賛意を示す際に使います。イギリス英語圏では特に頻繁に使われますが、カジュアルな表現なので、フォーマルな場では控えた方が良いでしょ
う。I think you bang on, mate. I think you bang on, mate. We've been moulding into that 8, but... We've been moulding into that 8, but... We've been moulding into that 8, but...
いかがでしたか？田中碧の評価はすでに確固たるものになっており、試合をすればマンオブザマッチを獲得し、月単位のプレイヤーオブザマンスや年単位のプレイヤーオブザイヤーの話さえ出てきています。開幕当初は中盤のプレイヤーでも控えの位置にあったようですが、怪我人が出て出場するようになってからは、 現状ではほぼ文句なしでファーストオプションになっていると言っても過言ではなさそうです。プレミアリーグレベルだという人もかなり多く、リーズユナイテッドが昇格できなくても、プレミアリーグのチームに移籍するという個人昇格という言葉もたびたび使われ期待されていますが、現状2位の位置にいるリーズユナイテッドがプレミアリーグに昇格する可能性も十分に高い状況です。今後も田中碧とリーズの活躍に期待しかありませんね。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。